Hello, so I'm working with King of Kings Refuge Ministry, and I have been going over my studies and going over some of the work that we're doing, and I kind of want to expand on one of these sermons that I was working on. I do the basic drafting and scripting of it as a benefactor of where I kind of want the content to go and kind of want the message to go, and that was to eat the rich. I didn't do it out of purpose of I was just so mad and upset, but kind of my generation is kind of frustrated with the old courtier. And, with myself, I kind of wanted to expand on a few topics. One of them is why we do Main Street Family Care. So we got into Main Street Family Care, and I had already built a couple of systems before I found Main Street or after I found Main Street, but before I actually found Main Street to where I wanted to kind of talk about investing in it and being a part of Main Street Family Care. And with Main Street, it allows us to take on professional volunteer roles where when you're coming on to Main Street Family Care and you want to be a part of the volunteer system, it's a really, really serious position. It's almost like a job, but I wanted to be in a position coming from a leadership perspective of always having been tied to service and loving service, being in the service, being a volunteer, being a professional volunteer, learning how to compete as a volunteer, learning how to get involved, being a part of my community and taking action within my community. I've always been that type of person, and that's kind of how I was raised. And money was not always a factor, except when we want to go to conferences or conventions or seminars, or we want to put on our own programs or projects. And with Main Street, we've got so many different divisions that people can use their specialties or they can use their degrees and technical skills to actually be of service to others in the community and the patients that go through Main Street. I'm not there to be a doctor. I'm not there to be a medical professional. A lot of times I'm just there to oversee everything and be kind of a co-signer to the leadership board that we put in place. And that's a great thing for the church because in the mission, we have created King of Kings Mission, where King of Kings Mission allows others in the community to get involved. It allows us to do outreach. It allows us to do different sermons in the community. It allows us to explore different parts of the community that we can get involved in and allow our members to get involved in. So it's a really great thing. It's also a wealthy program. It's also about legacy building, legacy foundation. It's about generational wealth and kind of uplifting. It's more uplifting our community, uplifting the saints, uplifting our members, uplifting our communities, to where a lot of us are not trying to stay in the basement. We're trying to be above where our ancestors built us up to. We're trying to match what our ancestors built us up to, and then we're trying to go further and beyond. So when I was discussing Eat the Rich, people say, well, aren't you rich? I'm wealthy. I'm not rich. I'm working towards being wealthy. But before I had wealth, a lot of my wealth was not ever in the picture. It wasn't in the plan. It wasn't in the process. It wasn't directly an involvement for where I stand, for service and servitude, volunteerism, and being an integral part in my community, however I can. It wasn't, being as rich or multi-billionaire. It wasn't really in the plans originally. It wasn't what I was aiming for or striving for, but money does allow us to do certain things. When it comes to Eat the Rich, my conversation was more of a mind state. It's more of a mindset. For us, in our generation, I'm with more of the millennial generation. I was born in 1995. The church isn't as old as everywhere else, but we kind of want to keep that structure present, that kind of conservative structure. You'll hear it in the music, you'll hear it in the entertainment that we put out. Some of the content that we put out is all faith-based, religious, or educational, whether it be a sermon, whether it's a film like Facing the Giants would do, or, Coach Carter, Remember the Titans, that type of stuff, faith-based, religious-based. works is what we want to put out in content and kind of guide the process. You know, a lot of the music that you hear is going to be older, it's going to be soulful, it's going to sample a lot of soul, it's going to sample a lot of gospel, but we're trying to create something new, trying to create and guide our own path. So when we discuss Eat the Rich, for the millennial generation, there's a lot of, and the generations that come after, there's a lot of fights and struggles between the older generation, the baby boomers, and those that came before them, where wealth has gradually increased over the decades and the centuries, where, you know, the United States is celebrating its 250th birthday this year, and that's an incredible achievement. And we needed to evaluate where we've come, how far we've come since then. You know, for our generation, we were going to have to work 2-3 times as hard. So we were going to have to match our ancestors to what they brought to the table through slavery, through not being able to read and write, for people that are people of color, and then for white people, people that are, you know, of white complexion, where a lot of the fighting and the battles that come from being somebody that is Caucasian, they kind of play the lives of people that are white. We had to have these conversations and kind of meld these conversations, guide these conversations to where people can vent their frustrations in plenty of discussions and moments that they might not have been a part of, but their ancestors might have been a part of. And some of the challenges that we're still facing today. So when it comes to Eat the Rich, the youngest of generations currently, the babies, toddlers, they're eating off of our great-great-great-grandparents, great-great-great-great-grandparents, and their assets and their legacy and what they left behind, but they also left assets that were from wars, the Cold War, World War I, World War II, and, you know, looking at some of the battles that are going on, but it was very religious, very structured. You know, you go to school, you don't show your ankles, you don't, you know, you kind of have to conform to conservatism, which is how a lot of us grew up. But this day and age, they got computers, internet, it's easy to find stuff, it's easy to do AI inspirations, but that's not how all of us grew up. And the smallest of kids are kind of eating off their great-great-grandparents and their legacies and their history through Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, through Rosa Parks, and just, you know, the moments that created those situations. President Kennedy, there's so much history that they're eating off of that some of us won't ever be able to touch until years and years and decades on down the road, you know, because our fights happen with our parents sometimes and our grandparents and great-grandparents, where we want to be able to use trust money or money that was left in a trust that has grown in appreciation, but it comes with rules, it comes with structures. So when we say eat the rich, it's a mind state. Our mind state is not always the same as our ancestors or our great-greats or grandparents or parents, where they grew up in a different time period, and sometimes they feel like they don't have to do this because they grew up in a tougher time period, but we have just different challenges in this generation. The Bible says, Psalms 34:21, evil will slay the wicked, the foes of the righteous will be condemned. And for us, it's very, very important to understand that you reap what you sow. For us, in 1 Timothy 6:10, it says, for the love of money is the root of all kinds of evils. It is through this craving that some have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many pangs. The love of money is the root of all evil. Not money is the root of all evil. It's your perception of money and how you use money, whether you use it as a tool or a resource to assist you through the works of Christ, or whether you use it to affect others and their lives and the decisions that others have to make based on the resources that they've been given. Proverbs 13:11 teaches that wealth acquired quickly through dishonest or dubious means will eventually disappear, whereas wealth gathered gradually through honest hard work and diligent management will steadily grow. So when we say eat the rich, we're not talking about people that just have money or that are doing the right things or going the way of the righteous to obtain that money. We're talking about the mind state of those that intend to do evil works.